Hey, this is a quick check at number 12, and that homework number 9. There's some flexibility in this, and so if you had some difficulty, WebAssign should have built in like a range of acceptable values, so if you don't get it exactly right, that's okay. Around what year was the fertility rate? This is about fertility rate. It's actually an actual data-based, as you can see, Center for Health and Statistics, and it's number of births per 1,000 women on years starting in 1970 and up. So be careful on how you count up. 1970 is right in the beginning there. The very first value is 1970. And we'll just have to count up from there. So around what year was the fertility rate? The whole graph is about fertility rate. So it's not slope of the tangent line, which would kind of be a really reasonable, usually when you see like, let's say this is fertility of women, then fertility rate would be the slope of tangent lines on here. Well, this is actually a graph of fertility rate itself. And it's asking when is the rate at its third highest. Well, the highest it starts is in 1970, and the other places are subsequently, although it's at like 21 years later. It's like 1981 and about 29-ish years later at that next one. Well, the third highest would probably be that year about 30 years later, roughly speaking. So it's about 2000. You can ballpark it with this, or you could say 1999. That'd be fine. And in that year, what you want to do, so that's that over on the side here. Let me see if I can get this right. I'm going to erase all the other ones. Okay, so it's just the far one. That's the third highest rate of fertility. And then you want to go horizontally over and say, yeah, it's about 2,000 births per women. So that's, coincidentally, they're the same, but it's, just a coincidence. Then which time periods is the fertility rate increasing most rapidly and most slowly? Most rapidly when the fertility rate was going uphill the fastest. Now we're talking about a question of the steepness of the graph. And so I'm going to kind of clean that graph up again up top and let you guys do more analysis on that. The increasing most rapidly chunk, probably this little range right here. So you just put the end points on it. It's kind of like up to the year 2000. So it's like somewhere around 1985-ish, the 15, up to the 21. So you could go 1985 up to 2001 or 2000, however you want to put this. So I'm going to do 85 to 2000. So you have to put in 1985 to 2000. Should be flexible enough, even if I'm a little off. And most slowly, was the fertility rate increasing most slowly? You're looking for the least steep little chunk. Looks like about right there. That's the least steep. And so that's, 6 years? So like 76 or 75 maybe to maybe 10 years after. So 75 to 80. 1975 to 1980. If you put 1976 or something like that or something close, I'm sure it'll be fine. And then during which time periods was fertility rate decreasing most rapidly? So now we're going to go decreasing. Let's change colors. Well, the first stretch is definitely the steepest, and we were saying that's 1970 to 75-ish. 1970 to 1975. And then most slowly, pretty mellow right about there. It's a pretty low rate of decrease. It's about 1980-ish. To maybe 1984, so 1980, 10 years after until about 14 years later, so 1980 to 1984, something like that. That's what I'm reading anyway, because this would be the peak of that graph right there, which is about 1980, down to the valley, which 1984, 1985-ish. Those are the two dates that correspond with that. Possible real-life fluctuations, reason for the fertility rate. Well, you could talk about, there's a lot of things that happen in those years. You could kind of dig it up as far as history, but there's movements for rights. There's a lot of rights that took place, nice independence, things for women in general. So the idea that the women's liberation movement had some peaking that happened in 1969 and the early 70s. Then there's also some economic issues that took place in there. So 1976 was an oil crisis where people thought the economy was in trouble, and probably there's fewer births when that happens. People don't want to have children if they see the future is less hopeful. And then as you move along, you'll start hitting other years where 1985 kind of plateaued in there. And again, there's pretty regular use of, more regular use of birth control and such. There's more reliable versions of it. And inequality movements. And then you get up into, this is kind of fun to look at. If you want to dig it up and find some things that you know about, the things that happen are usually movements in economy. Have to do a lot with birth rates. In good years, you're going to see more babies being born. The 90s were good years, and so you're going to see an increase up in those years, a lot of birth rate happening there. So that's the story. Hope that helps.